Mayor Dave Bing tonight is blasting the consent agreement the governor is proposing to fix Detroit's financial crisis and head off an emergency manager. We received a statement from the mayor within the last hour. He accuses Governor Rick Snyder of being disingenuous on a number of fronts, insisting the proposal circumvents the power of elected officials. The mayor says, and I'll quote here, "I'm tremendously disappointed that this consent agreement proposed by Governor Snyder does not represent the spirit of partnership needed between the city and the state to resolve the city's financial challenges. It forfeits the electoral rights of the citizens of Detroit guaranteed by the democratic process." Detroit City Council members also say it's not acceptable, not as it stands right now, but there is room for change as this process moves forward.
When we just did this in Inkster, this was kind of the same process. The review team agreed upon a consent agreement. City Council approved it with some conditions, and we modified the agreement.
Right now, we've gotten a proposal, and from that point, we now will pour over it, council, the mayor, and present a counter.
But the clock is ticking. They only have about 2 weeks. The state review team digging into Detroit's finances also received the proposed consent agreement. That was just before today's public meeting on this same subject.
Governor Rick Snyder is speaking out about his proposed consent agreement for the city. He
spoke about the plan to 7 Action News reporter Val Clark in East Lansing today and says it's time to move the city off the dime.
Don't we have to do something in terms of getting a consent agreement done? And I wasn't seeing a lot of action.
He is definitely lighting a fire. However, Governor Snyder insists his proposed consent agreement would not pull the rug out from under Mayor Bing or City Council members.
We actually put that right in the agreement, that the council continues its role as the legislative body for the city. So again, that's where I hope people take the time when the document becomes public, that you look through it and analyze it. And again, this is a draft for us to go through with the review committee. So again, this is not to say this is the final answer, but I think it's a very good starting point.
How much wiggle room is in that agreement, though?
Well, again, I'm always open-minded. Again, it's reasonable people talking about issues.
The governor also points out the mayor and council would help decide who serves on a new 9-member financial advisory team.
This financial advisory board is a group of people with real financial experience. Again, they're to be a resource, to be helpful.
And he wants to dispel speculation the consent agreement is really a backroom deal between him and the mayor.
Did you all sit down and hash this out at all?
The mayor largely hasn't necessarily agreed with some of these things as a practical matter, and that's why I thought it was good to just share it with the review team, with the city council and the public.
Like any good poker player, the governor could not be lured into prematurely playing or even showing his EM card. But of course, it is still in his hand. From the newsroom, Val Clark, 7 Action News.
And the question everyone is wondering about tonight is whether this proposed consent agreement would actually help the financially strapped city.
7 Action News investigator Bill Proctor went looking for answers and joins us now with what he's learned on this subject. Bill?
What it most certainly helps so far is the tug-of-war between folks in the city and the folks up in Lansing. This is, in fact, still a work in progress from all of what's been said about this 25-page consent agreement released today. But Birmingham turnaround expert Van Conway says the elephant is still very much in the room. Unless everybody's on board and follows the agreement to the letter, an emergency manager for Detroit is still possible.
You're probably going to see, ultimately, probably triggers in here, that if things don't happen, there'll be an emergency manager.
Detroit must cooperate, and Conway hopes city leaders are in a position to negotiate the best deal with the state. He's a manager and advisor to troubled companies and governments. But Conway says this agreement is missing a key component and shouldn't be signed by the city until there's a written statement on the money needed to keep Detroit afloat.
Who's going to cover the cash shortfall? Because if we can't cover that, this agreement's not going to do much.
State Treasurer Andy Dillon announced in this afternoon's press conference that indeed millions are coming to cover near-term needs to run the city.
We're going to refinance some existing debt, which frees up $37 million of principal payment that otherwise would be due, and then they would borrow an additional $100 million.
So far, that promise is not included in the document. What is on page 1 is that Detroit's mayor maintains control over development of strategy and policies of the city. But by signing the document, the city promises to undertake remedial steps. But at the same time, the Financial Advisory Board has oversight with respect to the financial management and stability of the city. Conway has another money concern. If Detroit still believes that state government still owes it some $220 million in revenue sharing since 1998, an argument the city has made recently, it should fight to get it before signing this agreement.
It's a very large number, and if the city truly believes that they're owed the money, this is a kind of agreement that should incorporate resolution of that.
Now, there's another element of this agreement that may prove to be a major sticking point for some. It says that if Public Act 4, which is the emergency manager law that is being challenged in court, is overturned, well, this agreement and the Financial Review Board will, in fact, remain in place for as long as it takes to bring financial stability back to the city of Detroit. There's no doubt that the fighting is going to start.
And the question still lingers, does the state still owe the city of Detroit $220 million?
You know, it's a debate that's been going on for a while. I asked Mr. Dillon about that some months back when all of this was beginning. He seems to think that from 1998 until the present, a lot of the elements of that law essentially fell to the wayside. Compliance was not complete. Detroit says, oh no, the promise was made during the Engler administration. We have a handshake. We should get the money. Conway seems to think they're going to need to go to court to get it settled.
Right. All right, thanks, Bill.
Well, we know you'll be on top of it.
Thank you,
Bill.